Hello, my name is Katrina Landsman. I am a horticulturalist and landscape designer. Welcome to the lecture portion of the online garden design course. The topic I will be presenting is drawing the design. In this presentation, I will discuss the overview of the design process and products, the basics of drawing a design, and the different diagrams and drawings such as functional diagrams, the preliminary design, and the master plan. In the design process, beginning with site analysis and the client program, next come the functional diagrams, preliminary design, and master plan. The circled process is the focus of this presentation. So, the basics of drawing the design are: the design is to be drawn in plan view or bird's eye view. Everything in the plan should be drawn to the chosen scale. And as you have learned in the landscape graphics module, circles or plant symbols represent the different plants. First, you need to draw the base map. The base map includes the property line, which is drawn using a dashed line, the outline of the house, driveway, other existing features that you will be keeping in the design, as well as existing plants. Existing plants have a dot in the center of the plant symbol, and the proposed plants have a crosshair. The base map should also include the border and title block. The example above also shows an elevation drawing, but that can be added at the end or the beginning of drawing the design. Here again is the order in which the diagrams and drawings are done. Functional diagrams, which includes 2 steps, bubble diagrams and a form composition diagrams, followed by a preliminary design, followed by a master plan. You may want to jump right into a preliminary design, but you will benefit from utilizing the functional diagrams first. So, what are these functional diagrams? What do they do? They are a tool to help you organize the space in a landscape. This step is where you utilize the site analysis you already completed, the client's wants and needs, and the outdoor room concept. This is when you get to be creative with the way that the landscape is laid out. The first functional diagram, as mentioned before, is a bubble diagram. Bubble diagrams are not exact. They only organize the spaces. It works best to lay a sheet of tracing paper over your base map and draw the bubbles on the tracing paper. You can have many drafts of a bubble diagram before you get the organization you think is best. On the previous slide, you may have seen different arrows and symbols such as the ones in this image. Those symbols are used to represent and keep track of circulation paths and views while you are organizing the space. Form compositions are the second step in creating functional diagrams. This diagram is a little more detailed and shows not only how the space is organized, but how it will be carried out. Again, this drawing is done on tracing paper over the base map. Lines can be drawn and extended out from the corners of the house and windows to create lines of influence. The lines can be straight or angled or both. This type of pattern can help you see shapes in the open spaces that you never noticed before. Again, this diagram shows more details into how the design will be carried out, considering the site elements, design framework, and the design theme. This drawing is an example of drawing the lines of influence. Once these lines are drawn and extended out, it can be seen where the views and focal points of the landscape will be. Here is the form composition created from the bubble diagram we saw earlier on slide number 8. The patio and deck now have a more defined shape and even a texture. The designer has also told us that the privacy screen indicated on the bubble diagram will be created using a fence and tall shrubs as seen in the form composition. Just like bubble diagrams, you can create multiple form compositions. Here is an example of a curvilinear, rectilinear, and irregular shaped form composition, all created from the same bubble diagram. Each space is organized the same, but the details are carried out differently. Are you drawn to a certain style? Or maybe your client expressed to you that they like a certain style. Here is another example of two different form compositions using the same organization and layout from the bubble diagram. You want to make sure that your form compositions have strong lines and defined spaces. Next is the preliminary design. Once you have chosen the final bubble diagram and created the final form composition, the preliminary design is when you refine everything one step further. Individual plants and plant symbols are added, paths have a clear shape and texture, and color can even be added for the preliminary design meeting with the client. There are 3 steps of refinement: aesthetic refinement, functional refinement, and spatial refinement. Aesthetic refinement includes the application of landscape design principles such as emphasis and unity, as well as creating strong bedlines and definition of each space, creating different garden rooms. Functional refinement includes solutions to the problems identified on the client program, circulation patterns, the amount of landscape maintenance, as well as the including landscape preference elements. Spatial refinement includes considering the 3-dimensional attributes such as proportions of spaces. How does each space feel next to the other? Also, think about including walls, ceilings, and floors to create the feeling of different garden rooms. Plant materials can then be used to reinforce these spaces. Here is the preliminary design of the bubble diagram seen earlier on slide 8 and the form composition seen earlier on slide 12. In showing this preliminary design to a client, they can easily see all the elements incorporated in the design, as well as the hardscape details and individual plants. Finally, the master plan. After the preliminary design meeting, revisions are made from what you and your client talked about, and you can then create the master plan. The master plan is very graphically detailed and specific. It includes a plant key, a design concept, and the construction details if there are any. This is not the same design as shown before, but this is a great example of a master plan and how it should look with all of the components such as the plant labels, design concept, and plant key. Reviewing again the order of the design process using these diagrams and drawings, you have the bubble diagrams, form composition diagrams, the preliminary design, and the master plan. I also wanted to provide more examples of each of these diagrams. So, here are 2 bubble diagrams of the same property where the spaces are organized differently. Those bubble diagrams were then drawn into 2 different form compositions. The one on the left is rectilinear, and the one on the right is curvilinear. And finally, here is the preliminary design, which was then made into the master plan. This plan does not show the plant key and plant labels that our master plan should have, but it is the continuation of the previous bubble diagrams and form compositions. As you can see, transitioning from the form composition to the preliminary and master plan is when the design really comes to life. It is a clear example of how the plants help to reinforce the space. The last portion of this presentation is to show that functional diagrams can also be drawn in plan view. This is less common, but it helps a designer to see scale and imagine what it would be like to stand in the space. You would not usually show the plan view functional diagrams to the client, but if you were sketching up something during your initial meeting, they would most likely enjoy seeing a plan of how you would organize the space. Another great way to get started on a design or inspired by drawing functional diagrams in elevation view is by printing out a photo of the house or area, laying trace paper over the top of it, and sketching the materials in. This brings me to the conclusion of this presentation on drawing the design. In summary, this presentation has highlighted the utilization of functional diagrams, the preliminary design, and the final master plan. Functional diagrams include two parts, bubble diagrams and form compositions. The preliminary design requires 3 types of refinement, and the master plan is the most detailed document and includes all the information that the client needs. Lastly, functional diagrams can also be drawn in elevation view. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation on drawing the design as part of the Iowa State University Department of Horticulture online garden design course.